Quickly bring in Glenn Corbett, who's on the phone with us from John Jay, fire sciences expert there. Glenn, thanks for taking a couple of minutes. How tough to fight a fire like this? This is not something you see every day here in New York, in the city where you do see basically just about everything.
Yeah, this is a very unusual situation and probably the most incredibly difficult fire to put out for obvious reasons. Basically, there's no easy way to access what's burning.
This is a vacant building that you're seeing directly next to this crane. It looks as though the FDNY now has the upper hand. You show up on a scene like this, Glenn. I guess the first thing is, A, how do we get water on this fire? What were they able to do as far, I mean, this is kind of marksmanship here. They were at the building across from the crane, just firing the water onto this burning crane.
Right. So the first, of course, the very first thing they're going to concern themselves with is the danger of this complete collapse or of the crane, the top of the jib, or on top of the crane, basically. So they're worried about that. But you're right. The issue is getting water onto it. It's probably, I guess, the motors in the jib itself is the top part of the, or in the where the operator's position is for the crane. Probably the motors, and so getting water on that's really, really difficult. And so, you know, what's going to end up happening is they're using a standpipe system in one of the adjacent high-rises. So they're using the pipes that are in these adjacent buildings, or this particular adjacent building, to basically apply water to it. And of course, one of the issues is that the firefighters up on the roof there really can't get a really good perspective exactly where the water's landing, because there's a great distance involved there, and this is something that they're trying to aim the nozzle so that most of the water that's being, discharged from the nozzle, that most of it, or at least a decent amount of it, ends up landing on the crane itself. So this is a one-of-a-kind kind of situation again, but it's New York, and things like this happen from time to time. But again, it's an incredibly unique and very incredibly difficult situation to deal with.
Yeah, just when you think you've seen everything, something like this ends up happening, and we've got pictures coming in from buildings all around the city of people seeing the black smoke earlier when the crane was fully engulfed, and now, like I said, it looks as though the FDNY does have the upper hand. What is the next step now? I mean, how precarious a situation is it going to be to get onto this crane to at some point dismantle it, and then of course figure out how this fire started?
Right. So that's an even just as incredibly difficult situation as what they're dealing with now. They're going to need to send folks up to the top of the crane, basically, and understand what's damaged, and of course the other thing is how they're going to take this thing down now as well. I think they're not going to worry too much about how it started. They're going to be more focused on making sure they can hopefully take it down safely, basically. So this is going to go on for a while because again, this particular crane, of course, the situation presents a collapse danger to those areas around it, basically. So we should expect for a while here now that this area may be isolated and cut off until they can actually get in there, understand exactly how much damage has been done structurally to the crane, and then figure out, okay, how they're going to basically remove it and take it down. So there's a lot involved here. Again, this doesn't happen very often. This is actually the first one I've ever seen like this, where we've had a major fire like this. So it's going to be a difficult situation going forward for at least, I am sure it's probably going to be at least a couple days here.
You are obviously a fire sciences expert. On a scale of 1 to 10, when you look at these pictures and you see what these firefighters are doing from the standpipe at the building across, shooting this water into the air, hoping they can get at least some of it on the fire, how difficult a task is it? This is like trying to water your lawn from the block away.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I mean, that's exactly what the problem is that it's not even that the firefighters on the roof, they really can't see exactly where it's landing, so they're going to be using other firefighters, along the side of what's going on, and then perhaps in other buildings, perhaps using the drone. I don't know if they've got it up or not, but just to try to figure out, okay, how to lift or move the stream so they actually put water on it. I think the other part of this too is that at some point, this thing's going to run out of fuel, basically, to burn. So maybe a combination of the water and the reduction in the amount of fuel here will probably play a role. So, but this doesn't happen typically, and if the of course, obviously, if the motors and things are at ground level, this thing would be put out in a few minutes, but because it is so high in the air and so far away from these other adjacent buildings, it just makes it an almost impossible task to try to deal with this.
Yeah, pretty incredible scene when we saw it. A 4-alarm fire here, so you've got lots of firefighters that are on the scene right now. As we mentioned, lots of street closures below. We are getting word now of 4 injuries reported. Now, we're not sure if these are, if heaven forbid, anybody was on or near the crane up high, or if these are injuries from some debris or water or anything cascading to the ground below. We'll continue to update that for you here. Glenn, again, just kind of as we wrap up with you, having seen this situation play out, seeing how well the FDNY did at extinguishing most of this fire from what it looks like, what's the big takeaway here?
Well, it just shows us, that, in the New York City, that we always have a variety of different kind of problems that the FDNY is going to have to deal with, and this is one that perhaps has been discussed, but I don't think it's ever actually had a fire like this before. So the takeaway for them is that hopefully we'll figure out what happened here and then understand how to perhaps deal with it better. But I don't know there's really any other way of dealing with it other than the way they're handling it right now. Yeah,
you bring up a great point. How do you practice for something like this, never knowing that obviously a crane fully engulfed is going to be the assignment of the day, but the FDNY up to the task for whatever happens, and true to form here, it looks as though they have extinguished this fire. You can still see a little smoke emanating from the top of this crane here, but for the most part, the flames that we saw about 15 to 20 minutes ago, those have been extinguished. Well, Glenn, we appreciate you taking the time for us. From John Jay, fire sciences expert, Glenn Corbett, thank you for taking a few moments, Glenn.
Thank you, Chris.